another season of After the Whistle. I'm Noah Genson.
I'm Kellen Voss. We're happy to have you. Let's get right into it. The Grand Valley State football team won its third game of the season against the Northwood Timberwolves, 28-24. With redshirt freshman quarterback Cade Peterson making his first collegiate start in place of the injured Katopka, the young gunslinger threw for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, both of which going to fellow redshirt freshman Davion Anderson. The Grand Valley defense was a big factor in this win as they were able to hold Northwood to 168 total yards, including 43 rushing yards. Brendan Brown led all GVSU tacklers with 10 tackles, including 2 of the team's 5 sacks. With the win, the Lakers moved to 3-0 on the year and will travel to Houghton this week to take on the Huskies of Michigan Tech. That contest will kick off at 1 p.m.
The number 4 ranked Grand Valley State soccer team recovered from their loss last weekend, beating the 13th ranked Columbus State Cougars 1-0. The lone goal of the contest came from Ava Cook, scoring in the 11th on a header. Kennedy Bearden and Sydney O'Donnell earned assists on the play. The defense for Grand Valley was stout all day long, as the Laker defense held the Cougars to 3 total shots on goal, all of which were blocked by goalkeeper Jessica Radis. GVSU soccer looks to improve upon their 4-1 record this week as they have 2 home matchups this week. They face Illinois Springfield on Tuesday, September 24, before taking on Saginaw Valley State 3 days later. Both games are set to start at 7 p.m.
Finally, the GVSU volleyball team went 0-2 in their first 2 home games of the season this weekend as they lost to Northern Michigan in 5 sets on Friday before losing to Michigan Tech in 3 sets on Saturday. Despite winning the first and third sets on Friday, they weren't able to get the job done in their game with the Wildcats. Emma Kleins led all Lakers with 14 kills. They once again struggled in Saturday's duel with the Huskies, as even with Kendall Yerkes serving 3 aces and Jaylee Primus racking up 3 blocks, the Lakers were still swept on their home court. GVSU volleyball will look to earn more wins this weekend as they have 3 home matchups with GLIAC foes. They face Davenport on Tuesday, September 24 at 7, before facing Wayne State on Friday, September 27 at 7, and Ashland the following day at 4.
That'll do it for us here on GV Sports. I'm Noah Genson.
And I'm Kellen Voss. All game, all season, always on After the Whistle. Welcome back to another week of Every Day is Saturday. I'm Kellen Voss.
I'm Noah Genson.
And as a Michigan fan, I didn't really want to come in today.
No,
after that loss. Just for those who didn't watch the game, number 13th ranked Wisconsin took care of business on their home turf, beating Michigan 35-14. The Michigan offense looked pretty terrible all day long.
Yeah, it looked like what we'd seen all year long from this Michigan offense. Nothing really there. Shea missing some RPO passes that he needs to make. In a system that, these passes are real short passes that you're not asking them to put a ton of accuracy on down the field or anything. These are little slant plays or something like that you expect a 5-star quarterback to be able to know, but just a four-year football college football player, you should be able to make those kind of throws. And not being able to do that, they tried to go to McCaffrey for a little bit there. McCaffrey got hurt. He got a concussion.
That was a rough hit.
It's just it wasn't a good look for anything. The defense got torn apart.
The defense was torn apart, and and it'd be one thing if they spaced this out and had air raid offense and had 4 or 5 touchdowns from that aspect, but it was just man on man. They just outmanned us essentially.
They only threw for 130 yards.
Yeah, and they rushed for more than 300.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, like we talked about last week, a dark horse Heisman candidate, and he clearly solidified himself once again as a candidate in the Heisman race. And it just seemed like the Wisconsin offense, things on the ground were coming easy to them.
Right.
And then on the flip side, just going back to the Michigan offense, I believe there were a couple turnovers. Shea at least had one pick. It's just this isn't we've been hammering this home for a year now that Harbaugh has made promises to this program
that he hasn't delivered
on, and I understand going 10-3, I can't necessarily get mad at a coach.
No, absolutely not.
But when you're not making it to the college football playoff in year 4 with all your guys, and you're not doing the types of things that these big name programs that you're supposed to be in the conversation with are doing.
Right.
This is a bad look, especially with all of the theatrics that Jim Harbaugh has put on. The "We've got it better than us," sleeping over at Quinn Ordean's house when he was in high school. All of these things are really starting to catch up to him, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize maybe this isn't the best fit.
I think it's kind of burnout with all the hoorah that he has, the hoorah mentality of it. It worked when he was at Stanford, and for the most part, it worked when he was at San Francisco. But I think that Michigan guys really can't buy into that now. In terms of going back to the offense, the Michigan offense is way too predictable. I mean, when they were in that goal line situation and they were 2 yards away from the end zone and Ben Mason's on the field, it's like, oh, I wonder why this guy we made gain 40 pounds is gonna do, and maybe he's gonna catch a pass. But no, of course he gets the ball, and of course he fumbles right away. That's I don't necessarily go towards firing Harbaugh quite yet or moving away from him, but this is one of those games that Harbaugh's biggest critics are going to look at and say, hey, you not only lost to Wisconsin, you got owned by Wisconsin. And you could even make the argument that his team kind of gave up towards the end there.
Yeah, he's 0-7 as an underdog.
Yeah.
And, some of those games, a couple Ohio State games, he's an underdog in, and I'm not going to give him too much slack for those. Playing Ohio State, you have to win those games as a Michigan head coach. But there were some rosters that were pretty good in the
Absolutely.
Ohio State.
I remember, going Twitter guy I follow, Scott Bell, Michigan. Syracuse against top 25 opponents, 1-12 over the past 5 years. Michigan 1-16. Yeah. Syracuse has a better record over top 25 opponents than Michigan does over the past 5 years.
Yeah, and you didn't expect this when Harbaugh came in, and I think this year might be a bit of a wake-up call, maybe for him. Maybe this is something that he needed to see. He needs to know that the old ways of doing things aren't just going to work in today. Even in a Big Ten where it was dominated by a ton of running and
the black and blue conference.
Yes, you had a grit and grind kind of mentality in the Big Ten, and now you're seeing some offenses evolve. You have Ryan Day in Ohio State evolving that offense a little bit, and you have guys like Lincoln Riley down south in Oklahoma that are doing these different things offensively. And then you have Harbaugh. I mean, you have the RPOs. It's a little flashy and such, but you don't have a guy in there either that is capable of making plays.
And in Harbaugh's entire tenure, he really hasn't had that guy at quarterback.
No, and I mean, really, I've talked about this with people before, and is Jake Rudock the best quarterback he's had? Because I think performance-wise, Jake Rudock has looked the best in any offense. I mean, Shea has had moments. He had that game in Northwestern. He won them that game last year against Northwestern. I'm not gonna discredit him for that. But there's been multiple times that he has not stepped up when he's needed to as the quarterback. As the former 5-star that we're getting from an SEC school, you need to prove to me that all of this. You said this weekend you were gonna show a statement. You guys were gonna prove a statement, and you put up 14 points.
The statement was the exact opposite.
You put up 14 points,
and those 14 points would have been garbage time. Yeah,
they were all garbage time points when Wisconsin's defense doesn't even care. And so, I mean, you looked like what Central Michigan did on offense. Realistically, it's not a good look, and you hope as a Michigan fan that this is a wake-up call for everybody around.
Obviously, for this season, it's gonna Zach Charbonnet's health is gonna be a big concern. You gotta hope that he gets back to 100% because the offense looked really one-dimensional.
McCaffrey was the leading rusher.
Yeah, and before he got hurt, McCaffrey looked pretty good.
Yeah,
I think that as a Michigan fan, I'd like to see more of McCaffrey. The 2-quarterback system, I don't like that. I think just throw McCaffrey in there and have Shea be his backup. At this point, we know what Shea Patterson is. He's not going to be anything spectacular. But yeah, this is definitely a wake-up call for Harbaugh. And if we see more, I mean, there's a lot of ranked teams in the schedule, Noah. You got Ohio State, you got Michigan State, you got Notre Dame. You got a lot of good teams. And right now, if Michigan plays like this against ranked opponents, they might struggle to make a bowl game at all, let alone a playoff.
It could be tough. There are some. We were talking about this about Michigan State last week about finding those 6 wins, and I think in the Big Ten you have enough games to at least get. I think Michigan can at least get to 6.
Like they have Rutgers this week.
That's more than likely a win. But I mean, you need to. You can't be Michigan and not show up against ranked opponents, and it's going to be tough because I mean. Let's move over to Michigan State, the team one team that I was worried about Michigan State facing was Michigan, and now after this performance against Northwestern, I know it's Northwestern.
Yeah.
It's a 31-10 win, but the offense looked better. Lewerke was able to move the ball down the field a little more. I think he had close to 300 yards or 250 yards passing, and Elijah Collins has really emerged as that number one.
He really
back,
has, yeah.
And he's looked great. 17 carries for 100 yards. And I think the Michigan State
and Northwestern is a tough place to play.
Oh yeah, it's so hard. It's a small stadium. Everybody's on top of you. It's never a great place to go in and play. Like last year, Michigan and Northwestern. That was an intense game.
Yeah. Moving on now to a more national aspect of college football. There was a top 10 matchup this week.
Yes.
Georgia ended up beating Notre Dame at the end there. I believe it was 23-17.
Yeah.
Jake Fromm, while he didn't, we were talking about this pre-show, while he didn't put up flashy numbers, his ability to be a game manager really helped that Georgia offense, and the Georgia defense made a statement to say, hey, we deserve to be thought about in this college football playoff picture.
Yeah, Georgia really looked really solid. Didn't look as solid as most people thought they were going to. I mean, going in as a 16-point favorite, people were expecting them to wipe the floor with Notre Dame, and Notre Dame really made the narrative about their team a little better too. I mean, we've seen in the past they go into the BCS whenever they go to a BCS bowl or the college football playoff, as we've seen recently. They haven't came and shown what they can do against some of these teams,
no.
and they've really Brian Kelly hasn't won any of those games, and so now being able to go into Athens and make it a fight against Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a competitive game the whole time, and so if you're a Notre Dame aspect, while this is a quality loss that you can say, and you can take this loss and you can say, hey, we have other big opponents going up, but if we can play like this against Georgia, we should be able to take care of teams like Michigan.
Yeah,
easily.
I mean, going into Michigan, they shouldn't be a worry at all for that Notre Dame squad.
No, yeah, they're good.
But as far as Jake Fromm and that Georgia offense, he really leads that offense well. He shows that he's a very NFL ready type of quarterback.
Absolutely.
And DeAndre Swift. He looked great in the backfield.
I wouldn't surprise me if he's a first-round draft pick.
Me either. I think he's a junior. I think he still has another year eligibility.
Because Michelle and Chubb were both first-round draft picks out of Georgia. And
I mean,
he fits that mold perfectly.
He would be. I think he would be a solid pro for sure. And
absolutely.
They looked great, and like you said, they solidified themselves as one of the top 3 teams in the nation.
And then just to touch on a fun game before we wrap it up here, Washington State thought they had it in the bag against UCLA. But hey,
Pac-12 at night, baby.
Pac-12 at night. Chip Kelly's brother got the job done. 67-64. That's not a football score you see very often.
Yeah, 67-63. It was a close one, or it wasn't a close one really throughout until the third quarter. It was a 32-point game in the third quarter. Washington State was up, looking to really take this game away. Their quarterback that was in, was it Gordon? Yeah, Anthony Gordon. Yes. He set the record. He broke Gardner Minshew's touchdown record. He threw 9 touchdowns, and that wasn't enough to win. It was an awesome ball game to watch.
Yeah.
Thomas Robinson, the quarterback for UCLA, he had 7 total touchdowns. He looked great leading that comeback. It was just a fun game to watch.
Absolutely. And Mike Leach coach teams are always going to be competitive in games like this. It's really going to suck for Washington State's resume when 2 or 3 months from now, when you're looking at, hey, Washington State as like a dark horse playoff contender, this loss is really going to sting on their resume.
Yeah, it really could, because in the Pac-12, like you said, in the Pac-12, it's pretty wide open.
Yeah.
It's them and
Very
Oregon.
wide open.
It's them, Oregon, Utah. And this could really come back and bite them.
Honestly, UCLA is not out of it either.
No.
I would say they sit at 1-3 right now. I don't know if they're going to win it, but if they can pull off wins like this against Washington State, Lord knows what they're going to do with the rest of the conference.
Yeah, it could be. This could be the time that the Chip Kelly offense is finally starting to come around, and we might see something coming from them.
Absolutely, that's good for Chip Kelly that he got that win under his belt.
Great for Chip Kelly.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for us here on Every Day is Saturday. Tune in next week where we'll give you more Michigan's talk, Michigan State talk, national talk. Maybe we'll have a little clearer picture of who the Heisman is next week.
We might have a better picture.
Yeah, absolutely. But until then, I am Kellen Voss.
And I'm Noah Genson.
Thank you very much.
Hello everyone watching GVTV. I am Aaron Poling, and we are starting a new segment called Caught Looking. This is going to be our baseball segment for the year.
Yep, I'm Joe Bielanski, co-hosting.
All right, so let's get started. We're going to start locally with the Detroit Tigers. Not real much to talk about, but if they're playing the Twins, who still need to clinch, so I'm guessing the Twins are come out and sweep them this week, and the Tigers are going to wrap up #1 overall pick. Speaking of the Twins, they're in the playoffs right now. Let's talk a little bit about the playoff picture and how do you think it's going to shake out?
Yeah, because for right now, obviously, we have the Dodgers. Who won the East? I just made a mess there. Who? What? The Braves. Yep. Got the Braves in the East. Last I already said the Dodgers, because the Dodgers are on pace too in the battle for best record in the league. It's down to them, Houston, and New York. Because I think Houston is sitting at like 102.
Yeah.
And something like that. So that'll be interesting to see who gets that home field advantage too throughout the playoffs, battling for the best record in the league. But yeah, we have the Braves, the Dodgers. It'll probably be the Cardinals out of the Central, and then our 2 wild cards as of right now is Washington and Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
So to start off there, like, again, there's still some time. There's like a week left of the season. I believe magic number for the Cubs is 3 for total elimination. They still stand a chance to the wild card. That number 2 spot's kind of fluid. But if it did end up being like Washington and Milwaukee, who would you like in that scenario?
I had to give it to Washington. Max Scherzer.
Yep.
He's just too dominant, and I don't see on Milwaukee who can go head to head with Max Scherzer
Without Yelich.
especially without Yelich. Yeah, they played that game in Washington. I was actually there for it, the 11-10 game where they win extra innings and they hit like 7 home runs in the game or something. And with Yelich, you'd think that Milwaukee's the better team, but once you get past Yelich, they have players who can play, but they're not the same team.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely take a bat like Yelich out of the lineup. And that was like one of the things that I was concerned about too. Like, so obviously now the Central Division for the Chicago Cubs is out of question, and they're battling for that second wild card. I don't know. If I'm any other team, I don't want to face Washington in a wild card because you know they're going to march Scherzer out there. Scherzer's going to give 9 innings of solid work, and good luck. So Washington in a wild game scenario where it's single elimination, 1 shot is definitely tough. Obviously, Anthony Rendon has been hitting well, and obviously you have Juan Soto. No, I think last year he was a rookie. Nonetheless, like he's really progressed based off of last season, and obviously Bryce leaves town. What's going to happen to this Washington team? I really don't think they're in that bad of a spot. Now, obviously, there's some things that they'll have to address. Aging starting rotation. It kind of seems like Strasburg is going to be out of there. Seems like he doesn't want to be there anymore. But for right now, that's our possible wild card. Wild card game would be Milwaukee and Washington. And then in terms of like for the division leaders with Los Angeles, St. Louis, and Atlanta, I don't know. I mean, obviously the LA's cooking, but I just have a problem believing in LA once they get deep into the playoffs because Kershaw is always going to have that game where he'll be looking okay, and then he just reverts back to Kershaw where it's like we knew it. He only goes like 4 or 5 innings. He's struggling. Team gets to him early. So sometimes the Dodgers could be hard to judge. I get that in the two years in a row they had brought the AL team to a 7-game World Series. So like I get that. And one small thing, they could be a 2-time World Series champions. I get that, but I'm not too worried about them coming out of the NL. Obviously, Atlanta is rolling right now with the addition of Dallas Keuchel as well.
Yeah.
And in the not even. It was the middle of the season. He had signed late. It wasn't really off season. But that Cardinals team too. I mean, as I found out this weekend, they're cooking. Their manager, his name's skipping my mind right now. But he's been talking about wanting, Matheny's gone out of there.
Oh, is he?
Oh, yeah. He got fired like midway through last year.
Yeah,
but anywho's, they've been saying like they want their pitchers to go longer.
Professionalism.
And Flaherty, that was on Friday. Like he was doing, I think he went like 7-8 innings, and he had a high in career pitch count was like 100 something. That's just something you don't see nowadays. So that starting rotation, if they get cooking and if they could be committed to going like the long run and giving a solid 6-7 innings, that Cardinals team could be dangerous if they end up winning the Central, which it's kind of inevitable at this point. It is what it is, but we'll see.
The one thing about the Cardinals that this weekend against the Cubs they proved to me is that they're never out of a game. They were down in the 9th inning 2 of those 3 games, and they came back and won, which is going to be something in the postseason. If you're going to win the World Series, you have to come back. You'll never be ahead for full games.
Yeah,
you have to have late inning magic.
And that was definitely too, like for a while there at one point, St. Louis was considered to be out of the playoff picture, and now they're more than likely going to be your Central champ. So the team is definitely full of dogs. They just don't stop fighting, and they're going to be tough for whoever they run into. But I don't know. I think your favorite out of the NL, even though I just trashed them, I feel like has to be Los Angeles. I think it's a real possibility that we get a Los Angeles-Houston World Series again.
Yeah, I'm thinking so too. Let's switch.
Let's turn to Houston. Go to the AL.
Yeah, let's turn to the American League. One of the series that's looking like it's going to happen is possibly the Twins and the Yankees. Both those teams right now are 1-2 in history in home runs. They're both crushing the ball right now this season. My biggest thing is between those 2 teams, who do you think has a better rotation, the Yankees or the Twins?
kind of got to give it to the Yanks, I feel like.
You think?
I think so, but didn't Severino just go? No, who went? No, Betances just went out from returning back. But yeah, and like that's the crazy. In terms of starting rotation, I think I do have to give the edge to New York. But that's the crazy thing too about New York as well is they haven't been healthy all season, and they're still a 100-win team. Yep. Just absolutely destroyed the AL. What is it? The AL East.
Yep.
So it's unbelievable. And as these pieces start to return, and we kind of see what this team's full potential could be. It could be a hell of an ALCS with if we're able to get Houston, New York, and I'm hoping that that's the case because that had happened I believe 2 years ago when the Yankees shouldn't have even made it to that point, but now they have these expectations, so that'll be interesting to see how that shapes out.
I do think that starting rotation for the Yankees will be the downfall. Halfway through the season, I think maybe still now, they didn't have a pitcher whose starting rotation ERA was under 4. So I think that's going to be the biggest problem. But like you said, I think Houston is going to be the favorites coming out of the AL. They got Verlander, Cole, and just a starting offensive lineup that can't be stopped.
And Greinke that they got at the trade deadline,
Yep.
which is unbelievable that you add a guy like him to an already dominant rotation.
Yeah.
And if those bats are alive and everyone's healthy, yeah, Houston is just as dangerous. And like I said, hopefully we can get that Yankees-Stros matchup again, because even from just a hitting standpoint, that could be an awesome series too.
That's all the time we have for today. Tune in next week where we'll go over the full playoff picture, and we'll get to the start of the playoffs. Thank you.
What is going on, GBTV? Welcome to the first episode of 10 Minute Misconduct, GBTV's hockey show. I'm Kevin Lepper.
And I'm Aaron Poling.
And like we said, it's the first episode, so excited to get started here. So Aaron, let's start local here, talk about the Detroit Red Wings. Obviously, first year of the Steve Yzerman era. Ken Holland's gone. He's in Edmonton. We brought in Steve Yzerman. Preseason's about a week underway here. Red Wings so far 2-1-1, one overtime loss to the New York Islanders. What are you seeing in the team so far during this couple preseason games?
So I've watched pretty much all of the games so far, and what I've noticed is that there are spurts of dominance with some of the young skaters between Anthony Ciu. He looks really good. Larkin played his first game last night, and he looked like he was last year. He's going to pick up, and I think he's going to have an even better season. Tyler Bertuzzi, Mantha, that whole first line that they had last year, they put up 2 goals last night, and they look good at parts, but then there's times where they look like they're the same team last year. Like with both the losses so far this year, they've blown leads late in the game, and basically that's the one thing that's going to keep them from taking that next step. Once they can figure out how to win games under Jeff Blashill, I think they're going to take the next step, and they're going to become a contender to play in the playoffs.
Yeah, just like you said, that young core of guys. You got Larkin, Anthony, Mantha, and then Bertuzzi. Those are guys you got to build this team around. You know, with all the veterans gone, with Cronwall just retiring, obviously we don't have Zetterberg or Datsuk anymore. You know, you got to build around the young guys, have those young guys step up and be an example for the even younger guys and the younger prospects to build this team for the future. Another interesting thing so far that's happened with the Red Wings, I think everybody was expecting Dylan Larkin to get the C this year, for him to be the new captain in Zetterberg's absence, but that's not the case. So this year the Red Wings are running 4 alternate captains with Dylan Larkin, Justin Abdelkader, Franz Nielsen, and Luke Glendening is taking the last alternate spot. What do you think about that?
So I think it was almost a given going into this year that Larkin was going to be the captain. But I think because of the changeover with Yzerman wants to see him and how he conducts his day-to-day business with the team. Yzerman wants to see him and how he conducts. I'm sure if he conducts himself the way he did last year, it's only a matter of time. Dylan Larkin will be the captain of the Detroit Red Wings.
I agree. Yeah, I was expecting him to get it this year, but that's not the case. But I do believe that maybe next season we'll see Dylan Larkin with the C on his chest. Let's talk about some of the younger guys we got going here that's been showing off in the preseason. Who do you like? Who do you not like?
So far, one of my favorite young guys that's come up and played is Joe Veleno. If you don't know anything about Joe Veleno led the QMHL last year in points and is an all-around playmaker. Some of the plays he's making on the ice, he's only 19 years old, I think.
I think so. He's 19 or 20.
He's real young. I think he's going to end up being the steal of the draft because they picked him number 30 overall, and he looks like a playmaker.
He does.
Moritz Seider, too.
Interesting pick there. I remember watching the draft, and that's not who I was expecting them to call. I've never even heard of this kid before then. But, it's interesting because, a problem with the Red Wings over the past couple of years, I feel like, has been the defense, A lot of those other guys, Jonathan Erickson, these guys, the veteran defense, I just feel like is not cutting it, So I feel like bringing in more D-men is the right move. So what do you think on Seider? What are your thoughts?
Seider, this has been Steve Yzerman's kind of MO, even when he was with Tampa. He doesn't necessarily go on the board of who everyone thinks is the top person on the board. Steve Yzerman will always go with who he believes is going to be the best player, who fits his system, who fits a system they want to play. Thing happened in Tampa Bay with Braden Point. He got a lot of flack for selecting Braden Point where he selected him. Braden Point scored 40 goals last year.
Just signed a new contract today,
yes,
too.
Braden Point got paid today.
Oh, he did. Yeah.
So it's just one thing that Yzerman's always done. He always picks his person that he thinks will fit his system that they want to play under Coach Jeff Blashill. And I just want to see how it goes. Seider so far, he looks like he's making some real heady plays. He's not going to be the flashiest defender. He's not going to be Cole Maker for the Colorado Avalanche. He's a rookie this year, but he is going to looks like he's going to make the right play, the sound play. I think he's going to be the number one in Detroit. Him and Philip Hronek are going to be the top pairing for the next 8 years.
Yep, I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm sure I'll be catching some of his games over at the Van for the Griffins this year. Let's talk about Joe Veleno some more and Philip Zadina. Do you think they're going to make the roster opening night, or do you think they're going to start him off in Grand Rapids for the beginning of the season?
Joe Veleno is going to start in Grand Rapids because the reality is he hasn't played a professional hockey game yet. He's played in the juniors, but he hasn't played. I think Philip Zadina is going to get a shot to see what he can do. He's going to get about a 9-game trial, kind of similar to what he did with Michael Rasmussen last year, except they can send Zadina back to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
I think they'll give him a trial run to see how he plays. If he fits in and he's playing well, I think they will keep him up. But I know Veleno will probably start in Grand Rapids.
Speaking outside the Red Wings, there's a couple big names that are holding out in contracts. One is Patrick Laine. What are your thoughts on him playing overseas right now, practicing with the SC Bern club over there?
I think Patrick Laine really wants out of Winnipeg. I don't know if it's even a money problem. He was a former number 2 overall draft pick. He kind of is an Austin Matthews shadow a little bit. It's always been him versus Matthews. And, of course, Matthews is a great player for Toronto. But I think Laine just wants out of Winnipeg. I don't know if he wants out of Canada necessarily, but he wants out of Winnipeg. He wants to go do his own thing somewhere else and move on with his career.
Another big name that hasn't signed yet, Mikko Rantanen, Colorado Avalanche. Obviously a big player for them, hasn't signed yet. Not close to signing, apparently. What are your thoughts on him?
This one's interesting to me because Mikko Rantanen had a great year last year, but the year prior he wasn't as good as what he is this year. So right now he had a great year in his contract year, so he is trying to get paid on what his contract year is. But if you go over his career previous to his contract year, he's probably not going to be in the $9.5 million that he wants. And if he does sign for that, the Avalanche could be hamstrung, and they're not going to be able to sign the rest of the players that they need to make a team that's going to win the Stanley Cup. Because their biggest issue is they are only their top line. Their top line dominates the game, but when they're not on the ice, which is about 40 minutes per game they're not on the ice, they fall way off.
Obviously, yeah, one of the best lines in the league, but your team's not only your first line. You got to have all 4 of those lines going at all times. So is there anything else you wanted to add? Any other news?
I'm excited. 2 weeks from Sunday is the Red Wings home opener. The NHL starts next Saturday. Real excited to get it underway.
Should be a good season. I'm really excited to see what Steve Yzerman's got under his belt, obviously coming back home from Tampa. So that's all for us. Thanks for tuning in for the first episode of 10 Minute Misconduct.
Thank you for tuning in to After the Whistle segment's Unnecessary Roughness. I am Mike Mahaffy.
And I'm Aaron McClory.
let's get right into it. We had a good week 3 of the NFL action this week. The Lions were able to surprisingly beat the Eagles after also another surprising win with the Chargers, but the Chargers haven't really been themselves this year. So what do you think about this Lions-Eagles matchup this past weekend?
Now, well, I think the Eagles absolutely did beat themselves in the end. Their offense just kept getting stuck in the mud. The 2 fumbles, one from Miles Sanders, the unforced one from Nelson Aguilar that was just gross.
Yep.
But you got to think about the fact that the Detroit Lions are not a bad team. They're a disciplined football team. They're not giving up big plays outside of deep shots to running backs, which just happened 3 weeks in a row. Something that's got to get dealt with in Kansas City for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at this game first before we even mention the Chiefs, I would say this team, they came out, which is surprising. We're used to a Lions team that struggles off in the first quarter, second half altogether, and then somehow, some way will make a game out of any game in the second half, whether they win or lose, which is actually the opposite of what they kind of looked like this year against the Cardinals. They came off strong, had a really good lead. I think they were up 17 points in the third quarter.
18.
Yeah, and blew that away and had to tie against the Cardinals week 1. And the same thing that happened this week where they were really handedly beating the Eagles the first half. They're looking really good, surprising to what I think they do. And they just kind of slowly, the Eagles started working their way back up, made it into a game. So that kind of scares me. But 2 things that I kind of want to bring attention to is how well the Lions defense is actually playing right now. I think their addition of their second round draft pick and linebacker,
Jelani Tavai.
Yeah, I always struggle saying his name. He's been a thumper and has been a really good addition. And then Tracy Walker has really stepped up and kind of taken place of Glover Quinn and really has shown a lot of promise. I think him and Quandre Diggs are very similar players in the aspect of their thumpers from the safeties position. And it's a good thing and a bad thing. Like they both step up and can make plays against the sideline, drilling running backs and stuff. But at the same point, when you get those thumpers, they miss a lot of tackles because they put their heads down and just kind of embarrasses themselves. And we saw a couple instances like that where Nelson Aguilar had that catch on the sideline and made like 3 people miss.
Yeah,
Quandre was the one that did the same thing. And it's like they're really exciting to watch, but at the same point, they miss a lot of tackles. So I mean, Tracy Walker's young. It's in his second year with the Lions and his first couple games starting. So I think he'll be able to figure things out. He's a really good promise. The one kind of thing that I think has been a really gaping hole is that we added in this free agency was Trey Flowers. He hasn't really done a solid ton, and he had a couple crucial penalties in this past game.
He had a nasty roughing the passer. Yeah. I think that would have been a 4th down at that point. And I don't know if he got his first. He has 1 sack on the season. I don't know if he got that sack yesterday. But he did get 6 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. So I think that's more than he had on the entire season up to that point. So at least he got it going a little bit because otherwise he's been kind of invisible when he's not drawing flags. I think the Lions' defensive line altogether has played really well.
Yeah,
I feel like.
I agree altogether.
Like A'Shawn Robinson, I kept thinking maybe the Lions should let him walk for cap space purposes. Not the case anymore. There's no way. This is a contract year for him. They got to extend him. And I think Deshaun Hand, when he gets back, I think that's going to open up Trey Flowers because Hand, as an interior rusher, is going to do a lot for what Flowers is going to be doing on the edge, and hopefully he comes back this week.
And we haven't even mentioned Snacks Harrison's doing Snack Harrison thing. Like
he got a sack yesterday too.
He's making huge plays always, especially in the run game, always thumping people. So he's a great addition. And then going in, they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, probably the most explosive offense we've seen in recent years, maybe ever. Some could say. I mean, I wouldn't make that argument, but
07 Patriots.
That's
I mean, closest thing.
I mean, we're gonna argue. We're not gonna take that take right now, but they're gonna. Moral of the story is they have a really tough team coming up, and I think do the Lions have any chance in that game? Like, what do you think going into that?
Well, one thing we saw from the Chiefs yesterday is that the Ravens ran all over them.
Yep.
And what the Lions want to do is they want to run the ball down your throat. We've seen that at least in the second half. They're trying to run. Hasn't gone so well to begin the year running in the second half, but the Chiefs have shown they can't really defend the run. And if the Lions can win time of possession and just not turn the ball over, not give up those explosive 83-yard Mecole Hardman touchdown plays, I think there's a chance. Do I think it'll happen? No, because Mahomes is too good. And Andy Reid, for my money's worth, is the best offensive coach in NFL history at this point. Best play caller, best play designer.
Definitely an argument for it. But no, I agree. I think keys to this game is one. I'm not going to come in and say they're going to win, but I think what I really want to see in this game is if this defense can at least slow down this Chiefs offense a little bit. We saw it again in the Baltimore game where, I mean, the Chiefs were the Chiefs, but the Baltimore Ravens were able to slow them down a little bit, which is surprisingly like holding the Chiefs to 33. Like, you shouldn't be saying that about a team, but that's pretty good. Like, you know, so I think just the defense, and then also with the offense. Like, if you want to compete with the Chiefs, you got to be putting up points. So you're going to need a lot of big plays, which, I mean, Lions history, we haven't really seen if we can really have huge plays like countless times and times again. And if we want to at least compete and be competitive in this game, then we're going to have to see an explosive offense, which will really test Matthew Stafford and Kerryon Johnson in that receiving core. But moving on to the NFC or other teams in the NFC North this year, this past week, we saw the Packers play the Broncos pretty well. Pretty well. I wasn't able to catch the game, but I saw a lot of the highlights, and Aaron Rodgers did Aaron Rodgers things. You know, you're not really going to do much, and we all know the Broncos' offense isn't the best, but I mean their defense is their defense. They got Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, so the fact that Aaron Rodgers was still able to do Aaron Rodgers things. You got any takeaways from that game?
You see, that first touchdown was on a free play, deep shot. Aaron Rodgers just does that better than anybody else. Marquez Valdes-Scantling got wide open.
As soon as he sees that flag, that ball's gone. He's just going downfield.
He's like, let's go, and then he tells the receivers to go, and Aaron Rodgers just so great throwing the deep ball. One thing that does concern me is their running game is extremely inconsistent. There's all this offseason hype about Aaron Jones, and he just hasn't gotten it going yet. He did score 2 touchdowns yesterday, but on 10 carries for 19 yards, which is not a good stat line for running back at all, not what you want. And I thought the Packers offense kind of bogged down in the mud for the second straight week, really, after a hot start. Like the Vikings,
they did that against the Vikings.
They got up to 21-0 against the Vikings, and honestly almost blew the game. We're not going to get into like what if there, but I feel like they definitely could have done more against the Packers or against the Broncos than they did. I feel like they honestly could have gotten into the high 30s, maybe even put up 40 on them if they really, stuck on the gas pedal.
I think that's the thing. I think Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy he can score at will. We see this Chiefs offense where they just score. They just score. But if we look at other high-powered offenses or good quarterbacks in the league like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, they just do what they can do to win. They're not going to go out there and put up stats like Patrick Mahomes. And it's not that they can, or not that they can't, but I feel like they just want to go out there and win the game. So it's different. I think Aaron Rodgers, when he wants to, he can score. So that's why I think part of it maybe is like they go out there, put up 14 points up, and have a commanding lead the rest of the game and other things. But I mean, that's up for discussion. The Packers are 3-0 right now and going to continue doing Packer things, especially with Aaron Rodgers. But moving on, I think one of the big games that I wanted to talk about before we kind of wrap this show up is that Saints Seahawks game. I really want to talk about that because this is the first game that in the Breeze era in New Orleans, without Breeze, they were able to win. They lost 3 games. Breeze hasn't started for 3 games previous to this, and they lost all 3. But Teddy Bridgewater was able to come in and do Teddy Bridgewater things, and they were able to beat a very good Seattle Seahawks team.
In Seattle, too. And
Definitely.
That's the first time in the Pete Carroll era that the Seahawks have lost in C-League in September. And that's just awesome to see because I definitely didn't expect this. I don't think anybody did. And the thing is, the Seahawks really didn't play a horrible game. I mean, there was that Chris Carson fumble that Von Bell took back to the house. There's that punt return. But just by, if you weren't looking at the scoreboard, you were watching just straight eye test, both these teams looked really nice.
I definitely think this game isn't going to slow down the Seahawks at all. They played one of the other best teams, but they're going to continue doing Seahawks things the rest of the year.
And for the Saints, just Alvin Kamara is so good. He was just making everybody miss. He was breaking tackles. He was catching everything. And I'm like, this guy's small. He's fighting through tackles. He's making people miss. And Alvin Kamara is just unreal, man.
That's the one thing I wanted to see without Mark Ingram, if he could take over that role of being able to run in between the tackles. And I think he's actually shown glimpses of being able to get the handoff going inside zone and being able to pick a hole and take off and stuff. I mean, do I think he's top tier like a Zeke Elliott who can pound the ball like that? No, but do I think that's good enough to add to what else he can do on the outside, which is by far probably one of the best in the league next to maybe Christian McCaffrey and Saquon from the edge and receiving back. But I just think it was an amazing testament for this Saints team to go on and continue the year, especially when they get Drew Brees back maybe like week 8, week 9 after his thumb heals. But in closing, we have a big NFC matchup Monday night, which we'll talk about next week with the Bears takes on the Redskins. I think they're going to have a really big matchup and testament to see if that offense can do something against a mediocre Redskins team. But that's been our show today. I'm always Mike Mahaffy.
And I'm Aaron McClory.
And thank you for tuning in to Unnecessary Roughness. And we'll be back next week with more after week 4 of the NFL.
Go Lions.